On Christmas morning, my brother said, "Mom and Dad said you're the reason we can't have nice things," in front of my 3 kids because I had refused to lend him $20,000 to start his 5th failed business. My parents agreed, saying I'm selfish for having my own house while he still lives with them at 38 years old. The Christmas ham sat untouched on the table as my 7-year-old daughter Emma tugged at my sleeve, asking why Uncle Marcus was being mean. My mother's crystal wine glass trembled in her hand as she added that I'd always been the ungrateful one. I stood up, smoothed my dress, and smiled before gathering my children's coats. What they didn't know was that I had already received a very interesting call from First National Bank 3 days earlier. A fraud alert. Someone had attempted to open a $75,000 line of credit using my social security number and forged documents. The bank's security system flagged it immediately because the application came from an IP address I'd never used, located at my childhood home address. I had thanked the bank representative, asked her to preserve all evidence, and told her I'd be filing a police report after the holidays. I'm Patricia Morgan, a certified public accountant who spent 15 years building my career from nothing. While Marcus bounced from one get-rich-quick scheme to another, I worked 60-hour weeks, earned my CPA license, and saved every possible dollar. My parents never came to my college graduation. They were too busy bailing Marcus out of his 3rd failed restaurant venture. When I bought my modest 3-bedroom house 5 years ago, my mother cried because I hadn't offered to let Marcus live with me rent-free. The house they were so jealous of, I bought it through sacrifice while they enabled my brother's endless failures and increasingly desperate schemes. As my children and I walked to our car through the December cold, my phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. "Way to ruin Christmas for everyone. Hope you're proud of yourself." I deleted it without responding. My daughter Emma asked if we were ever going back to Grandma's house. I told her maybe someday, but not until some grown-ups learned how to behave. What I didn't tell her was that in my purse, I carried a folder of documents that would transform this family gathering from merely uncomfortable to absolutely devastating. The bank fraud was just the beginning of what I'd uncovered. That evening, after putting my children to bed, I sat at my kitchen table and opened my laptop. The private investigator I'd hired 6 months ago, after my parents' increasingly aggressive requests for money, had delivered his final report 2 weeks before Christmas. Marcus wasn't just a serial failed entrepreneur. He was running a sophisticated scheme, convincing elderly people to invest in non-existent businesses, then disappearing when they asked for returns. My parents weren't just enablers, they were accomplices, using their retirement community connections to find him marks. The fraud totaled over $400,000 from 17 victims. I had copies of everything: bank transfers, text messages, email chains where my mother coached Marcus on which widows had the most savings, audio recordings from a victim's family member who'd hired their own investigator. The police would be very interested in all of it, but I wasn't calling them yet. I had a better plan, one that would hit my family where it truly hurt: their pristine reputation in our small town. My father had been a deacon at First Presbyterian Church for 30 years. My mother chaired the hospital auxiliary board. Marcus played softball in the community league. They all prided themselves on being pillars of respectability. The next morning, I received another text from my mother. "Your father and I are very disappointed in you. Family helps family. We raised you better than this." I screenshot it and added it to my growing evidence folder. Then I made 3 phone calls. First, to Margaret Chen, the investigative reporter at our local newspaper who'd been asking around about elder fraud in retirement communities. Second, to FBI Special Agent David Richardson, who specialized in wire fraud cases. Third, to attorney Jessica Williams, who handled both criminal defense and civil litigation. Each conversation was brief and professional. Each person expressed significant interest in reviewing my documentation. By New Year's Eve, I had set every piece in place. The newspaper story would run on January 2nd. The FBI would execute search warrants on January 3rd. The civil lawsuit from victims' families, coordinated by attorney Williams, would be filed on January 4th. My parents and brother would ring in the new year with no idea that their entire world was about to collapse. As I watched the ball drop on television with my children sleeping upstairs, I raised a glass of champagne to myself. They had called me selfish for protecting what I'd earned. They were about to learn exactly how thoroughly I could protect it.